Hello, everyone. Our final interview this week at our office in Atlanta is with Jon Tuggle. When I came to Fulton Concrete over 20 years ago, I began hearing about the legendary Jon Tuggle. I'm not exaggerating. His name would come up. Well, you know Jon Tuggle. I said, no, I've never met Jon. Finally, I got to meet Jon and began a friendship that spanned nearly 20 years. I'm excited about this interview because there's so much about Jon's career, bits and pieces, details that in our industry that I know I don't know, so I'm eager to learn. Jon, we are grateful to have the chance to visit with you, to learn about you, your experiences in the industry, and what you're up to today. But let's start, if we could, where I always like to start, with Jon the man. I want to hear about, go back to the beginning. Where'd you grow up, and kind of, give us your biographical sketch, if you will.
Yeah, well, Bill, thank you for having me today, and I am truly honored to be here and have this conversation with you. And before I get started, I do want to thank you for your friendship through the years, but really what you're doing for us as an industry here in the state and your role now with the Ready Mix Association. I think you're taking us in the right direction, right path, and I'm excited about where we're going as an industry. And in preparing for today's conversation, it gave me a chance to kind of look back over my past and reflect. And one thing that really stood out was how I can really connect the dots through the years on things in my life, how they shaped me, and how those things have helped me get here today. And I have the privilege of going to North Point Church, and I get to hear Andy Stanley, who's the leader at that church, every weekend. And a few things that he talks about is providential relationships and pivotal circumstances. And I can look back and see circumstances and relationships that have helped drive my career. I also have a unique background in that I've worked in ready mix, building materials, aggregate, cement, packaged concrete, technology, and now concrete subcontracting. So I've seen many facets of our business and many facets from different markets and different geographies. So thanks again for today, and thank you for giving me a chance to spend some time reflecting, looking backwards some. So, but about me, I'm actually born here in Atlanta, Georgia Baptist Hospital. My parents lived in Brookhaven, and when I was about 4 or 5 years old, they moved way out in the suburbs to Norcross, off of Jimmy Carter Boulevard, and we lived there for a couple of years until my dad was transferred to South Georgia, and we settled in Statesboro. So Statesboro is actually where I grew up and schooled in high school. And at that time, Statesboro was really a small community. Georgia Southern College hadn't experienced the growth. Growing up, it was kind of like a country music song. I had a chance to hunt, fish, tractor pulls, mud bogs, all that kind of stuff is what we did. And so it was a great upbringing. I can blow gnats like the best of them. So it was a great place to grow up in a small community. But I went to Statesboro High School, played football, and primarily all through high school. But was able to have several jobs, and a couple though. Really, the one of them was I was a part of a masonry construction company there. I was a laborer. Would work summers and Christmas with that masonry crew in Savannah or down at Fort Stewart in Hinesville, or building locally there in and around Statesboro. And that's where I was introduced to construction. But I remember getting there at 6:30 in the morning, mixing mud, stacking scaffolds, all day long, tendering the masons to make sure they had mud and block in front of them. And so that's where I was introduced to construction. And I can't say that's told me I need to be in construction, and probably told me I didn't want to be in construction, but it really helped a lot. As I was telling you a minute ago about a time in 5th grade where when I was in elementary school, I always wanted to be a truck driver. And I remember one time a teacher called me out and said, "Hey, would you please quit idling in class?" I think I was daydreaming and idling. So, again, there are some of the dots that I think, looking back, are starting to connect. how I am today. So finished up at Statesboro, had a chance to go off to school, looked at Auburn, looked at Georgia, and made the better choice of going to Athens to college. And there's nothing like game day Saturdays in Athens. But spent 4 years in Athens, was part of a fraternity, and had a chance to be part of a group of men that obviously enjoyed the college life, but after college are shaping our state in tremendous positions here. And I was around those kind of people, so that helped shape me as well. But after Georgia, came to Atlanta, as most people do, because that's where all the jobs were. Came to Atlanta with C&S Bank, which is now Bank of America, and joined their retail bank management training program, where I was able to learn retail banking, finance, but also help develop my leadership skills through the banking experience. But while at the bank, I met my wife, or at that time, I met a beautiful young lady in Buckhead, where we all would go most weekends, but met her there, and we began to date, and for a while, and at some point in time after we were dating, it came time for her to introduce me to some of her family. And so we had dinner one day at Houston's on West Paces Ferry. And that's where she introduced me to her sister and her brother-in-law. That's Barbie and David Grayson. And if I remember correctly, Barbie and David had Will with them. Will was probably 6 months older than them. So that's where I was introduced to them. Time marches on a little bit longer, and I began to get a little restless at the bank and want to do something different. So Mary Ann suggested I reach out to David. We were still dating at the time. Suggested I reach out to David for some guidance. And so David was helping connect me with friends and network and different things. And after several months of that, he called me one day and said, and David was sales manager at Blue Circle Materials at the time, over commercial sales. And he called and said, hey, I've got one of my guys is leaving. What do you think about coming to work with us? He said, I'm looking for this, this, and this. And I said, that's strange. I'm looking for that, that, and that. So David took a chance, put his name on the line, and hired me to come into commercial sales at Blue Circle in 1991. And that's how I got introduced to the industry, because of him.
I love the connecting the dots thing, because the older you get, I think your ability to do that, of course, it just gets, you know what I'm saying? In other words, when you're in the thick of things, sometimes you wonder, is there any sense to my life? Well,
obviously, it's much easier looking back, but when you're in the moment looking in the future, it's hard to see how they all tie together.
Yes, exactly. Well, do this, and you alluded to it in your opening remarks. You pointed out the different businesses that you've been involved in that are, come back to that are associated with concrete. Talk us through that a little bit. Obviously, Blue Circle in sales, and then just kind of highlight and walk through your different experiences for just a little bit.
I will, and as we do, you'll hear things and names sometimes. So I worked for David. David, after a year or two, left. That's when he went to Vulcan. But so was with Blue Circle. Had the chance to move to Macon and head up our sales team in South Georgia. And the very first person I added to my team there was a young man by the name of Corey Lee. And so Corey and I worked together there with some other people. While in Macon, I was recruited to come back to Atlanta with RMC Allied.
Yes. Let me pause you just real quick. So you started at Blue Circle roughly how many years after the acquisition from Williams Brothers? Roughly
5 or 6.
About 5 or 6 years after. So it had settled down and settled into the new ownership and.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but still had the Williams Brothers. A lot of the same people were there.
Yes.
The same. What a wonderful, what an awesome team that was.
Right.
A lot of those people were still there. So it was a great experience. But spent a couple years in Macon, heading up the sales teams for Augusta, Savannah, and Macon. but was recruited to come to Atlanta with RMC Allied at the time. So I transferred back to Atlanta and enjoyed several key roles there. It helped expose me to a little more operations as well as we changed some of the structure of how we operated. But in 2005, Cemex acquired us, and I was really excited about the opportunity for Cemex. I had a chance, once the acquisition closed, I spent 3 months on the post-merger integration team. So I traveled the U.S. to the different RMC sites as a way to identify best practices that Cemex would implement as part of the Cemex way. So once that finished up, I came back to Atlanta, and there were really no roles available for me because the Ready Mix USA transaction was taking place with Cemex. And Rob Van Til, who was the general manager at the time, he was actually asked to go to Houston, and he said, no, I need to stay here and see this deal through. You guys should ask Jon to go to Houston. So Cemex said, okay. So they asked me to move to Houston and be the vice president general manager for the Houston operation. So my wife and 2 young daughters packed up the car and moved to Houston. And
what year roughly was that?
In 2005.
2005, gotcha.
So I remember the day we decided to move. We all cried in our living room, but looking back, Bill, that's probably one of the best career moves and relocations for my family that we could have had. So spent time in Houston, and obviously with the corporate headquarters for Cemex there, I got to know a lot of Cemex people and become known inside the organization. But Houston's a great concrete town. Every street's paved out there. You wake up to 1,000-yard paving pours every day, so it's a big concrete town. But I had a great experience, and about a year before the Great Recession, Cemex, as most big companies do, decided to restructure themselves. They made the Rinker acquisition, and they were restructuring the company. So we were setting up a region here in the East Coast, and the office was going to be in Atlanta. So I had the chance to move back to Atlanta from Houston as the VP of Operations for our Atlantic region, which was the Carolinas and both Clinchfield and Knoxville cement plants. They were rolled up into one region. So I had a chance to come back to Atlanta and be VP of Operations with the ready mix and building material business. And 12 months later, it all hit, and we closed the office in Atlanta. And one Sunday afternoon, I got a call from Carl Watson Jr. Said, hey, I'm going to be in Atlanta tomorrow morning. I'd like for you to be the VP GM for us in the Carolinas. So Carl flew in on a Monday morning. We met, and at noon, I headed up to Charlotte for my new position. So spent a few years in the Carolinas over that operation. Again, change took place. Had a chance to spend a year and a half or so in cement sales as VP of cement sales for our Knoxville plant and our Clinchfield plant. And did that and loved cement. But your heart's always in ready mix. And to my cement friends, I wasn't ready to retire just yet at that time. So I had the chance to come back to Atlanta and run the operation here in Atlanta. And then in later 2012, I left Cemex, took a few months off, and had the chance to go work for Quikrete. And so putting packaged dry concrete in a bag, although it's still concrete, is a lot different process than producing ready-mix concrete. More of a manufacturing process, engineering brain, like yours, versus I'm more of a sales-oriented person, so becoming an operations person in a highly manufacturing was what a wonderful chance for me to learn and see something different. But at times I struggled because I didn't have the engineering degree, but I've had our operations in the Southeast from Miami all the way to New Orleans. So I spent a lot of time inside Quikrete plants.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Is how many? Not that this is about Quikrete. I'm just curious. How many Quikrete facilities are there in the country? Are they scattered around, or? Yeah,
so in my region I had 12.
Wow.
Just in the Southeast.
Wow.
At the time there's probably upwards of 50, but since I've gone, Bill, that company's made acquisition after acquisition after acquisition. So they're a lot bigger company now, but still a family-run business. Started by their dad, Gene Winchester, and the 3 brothers are still there to this day. So it's a pretty impressive story that company is.
Yes.
But for me, it was a great growth opportunity, a chance to expose me to a totally different aspect of the business, somewhat related, but now more retail. Home Depot's a big client of theirs,
Right.
Lowe's. My gosh, little hurricane blew up out in the Atlantic, and all we're doing is packaging dry sand to send down there for them to
Wow.
stack around their houses. So had a great opportunity there at Quikrete. A friend of mine, Steve Cox, with Grace Admixtures, was at Command Alkon. Steve called me one day and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a guy." And I said, "Well, I'll help you find that guy." I hung up the phone, and I thought about it for a second. And I said, I think Steve was asking me. So I called him right back and said, "Were you asking me?" He said, "Well, kind of." So Steve recruited me to go to Command Alkon, and spent some time working with Command Alkon. On the technology side, is Eastern Region Sales Manager. So we had everything on the East Coast, Eastern Canada. So the great thing about that is I've been in ready-mix companies, aggregate companies,
Wow.
trucking companies,
Wow.
from Miami all the way up to Prince Edward Island,
Unreal.
Ontario. And at some point, I think the writing may have been on the wall. Then we were in a customer's office to try to sell him a new batch system. And he and I were talking for 30 minutes about market, trucks, mix designs, things that ready-mix guys tend to want to talk about. And the sales guy, Teddy Keller, that was with me, leaned over and said, "Would you please be quiet? We're here to sell a batch system." So I think I knew then that my heart was in ready-mix, and I probably need to look at things there. So I had a great time at Command Alkon. I learned a whole lot about a whole different aspect of our business. But once again, I got a call, somebody saying, "Hey, what do you think?" And Corey Lee called me and said, "Hey, we're looking to make a change here at Martin Concrete. Would you come work with us?" And I've known Martin Concrete. Jeff started this business in 1991, 6 months before I got into business. And he was one of my top 2 largest customers. And so I've known Martin for many years, but Corey asked me to come here. So that's how I'm now at Martin Concrete.
That is an unbelievable story, John. What a you've touched it. You've been in there. I guess you've not worked for a construction aggregates company. I did, or you did in a way.
Well, I did. But when in couple of those different jobs, we had sand operations.
Yes.
So oversaw some sand production, but obviously visiting with aggregate construction.
Oh yeah.
From the technology side, didn't run it, but had exposure to it.
Tell us, take just a little bit, and tell us about Martin Concrete. I mean, I know I've learned more in the last year since I've talked with you, but when I think about Martin, 2 things come to mind: portable plants and big box, big slabs. Tell us a little bit about Martin. Just a brief history and what you folks are up to today, because y'all are great members. So tell us, take a moment.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Bill. And actually, what you just said is what we struggle with every day. In that our bread and butter and how the company was founded and our growth, a lot of that came from high production tilt wall projects. But really, we're a lot more than that. We're really all things concrete. We're in different market segments, from manufacturing to logistics and data centers. We're building a school right now in Alabama, a prison in Alabama, a church in Tennessee. So we do a lot more than what you just described, but we struggle with that every day because people know us as that. That's how we were started. But the business was founded in 1991. Jeff was here working as a VP with a general contractor that Jeff Martin, excuse me, I'll clarify that.
Yeah.
But Jeff was here working with a general contractor. That general contractor found itself upon some difficult times and went out, and so Jeff found himself starting his own company with the intent of becoming a general contractor again. But it wasn't too soon after doing that he realized he's being asked to price more subcontracting work as a contractor, concrete contractor. And so then that's how he formed J. Martin Concrete. So that was in 1991, and the company has steadily grown since that time, from mostly Atlanta-based contractor doing work around here to now we have an office in Nashville. We are opening an office now in Charleston and have future growth plans to do more offices elsewhere. We do more than tilt buildings. Like I said, we are in different market segments. That's part of our growth strategy, is to broaden and diversify into different markets, and we're having great success in doing that. Through the years, as Martin's grown, there's a number of things that we've done for ourselves that we recognize we can do for other people. And the first was there was a group that was operating in the cranes. It was a separate company, and that company went out of business, and so Jeff acquired that crane business and formed the company called Full Tilt Cranes. And so that's one of our 5 subsidiary companies that we have. So formed Full Tilt Cranes. 11 years or so ago, a developer said, you guys should maybe consider having your own concrete plants. And so that's when RMC Ready Mix was formed. We were also placing and finishing our own concrete at the time, and so 3 or 4 years ago, we said, hey, we can do place and finish concrete for other people. And so that's when we formed MC Finishing, our third-party place and finish business. We also have a pretty good safety program. A lot of our general contractors were asking us, hey, can you help train our subcontractors? So our safety program, which is, we have a .63 EMR, I don't know if that means anything, but is good. So we formed a company called Finish Safe to do third-party safety training. And we also had a trucking operation. We're hauling our equipment all over. We leave Atlanta empty to go to Savannah to pick up something to bring it back. And we said, we can do this for others. So a little over 2 years ago, we formed Martin Heavy Transport as a heavy haul business. And so now we're transporting our equipment, but really we're probably doing more for other people than ourselves. And so all those businesses were startups, and in my role at Martin is VP of Contributing Companies, and so I get to oversee MC Ready Mix, MC Finishing, and Martin Heavy, and just recently added sales and business development to what I oversee. And really, so at the end of the day, we all know it's one or two people's fault when there's a problem on a job site. It's either the finisher or the concrete guy. And so what I do each morning is I just wake up and look in the mirror and just yell at myself.
Yes.
Because it's my fault one way or the other.
So, right.
And I sit on our senior leadership team, and but get to wear multiple hats every day. And so it's pretty exciting to be part of what the company has done, but also to be part of where we're going as an organization is really exciting.
That is really a fascinating story. And I knew some of that, not all of that, so that was really helpful. I'm sure that'll be helpful to a lot of our listeners to understand. And one quick comment that this past February, we had our first ever safety and environmental conference that our Safety and Environmental Committee designed and set up, and I'm pleased to say that that you and Martin were so helpful to provide this wonderful training space there in Douglasville. And it's Douglasville, right? Austell.
Close enough.
But we had a wonderful first ever conference at your beautiful facility, and so we're really grateful. In fact, today at lunch, I'd ask you if you would mind hosting the next year's conference, which you agreed to. So thank you for that. Do appreciate that. Let me ask you this. What would you say as you look back over many years and many different businesses? What have been some of the big changes, kind of shifting of the plates of the earth, however you want to frame it, but points where there was dramatic changes or notable changes in the industry? What are some of the things that come to mind for you looking back?
Yeah, Bill, and there's a few things. One of them is consolidation and vertical integration of companies, and I've been able to participate in some of those. But it's changed the landscape, I think, of our industry for many years. Early on, being family run to corporations that are vertically integrated. So that's pretty notable. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I come at our industry from the corporate perspective. I didn't join or wasn't part of a family-run business, although I am now, and get to see the little bit of see the difference there. But I come at it from that perspective. But the vertical integration and seeing how that changed and reshaped and continues to reshape our industry is pretty big. Technology, the things that we're doing with in-drum technologies, being able to see what's happening inside the drum is pretty awesome. The telematics that we have, our dispatchers can't lie anymore,
right?
Like we once did. But looking back, when I was in sales, it seemed like I was more leaning toward the big box type customers. And I remember when preparing and planning for a 300-yard concrete pour was a big day for us in the industry. To talk about a 1,000-yard pour would take weeks to prepare for that. But what has changed on the concrete subcontracting side is the laser screed.
Oh,
the laser screed
right.
and the high-powered, the bigger riding trials gave the industry a way to do larger and greater size pour with fewer manpower and to be able to work longer hours. And by doing that, then that gave the building owners the opportunity to build larger and bigger buildings in a more timely fashion. From a capital standpoint, build a bigger building quicker is a much better capital investment and all that. So that, and even now drone technology that we're looking at. We were talking today or yesterday about a drone that can fly a job site once we have formwork in place. Can fly it, compare it to the plans, and within a quarter inch tell us that we have anchor bolts in place.
No kidding.
So before we make a concrete placement, we can correct imperfection or something we've done wrong to make sure we get it right.
Unreal.
Which makes all of our lives a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Interesting. What would you say you really enjoyed about our industry, and what has kept you in it? And you alluded to this earlier a little bit, but what is it that has kind of kept you coming back to concrete?
Two things. First, no 2 days are the same. And you wake up each morning and there's always going to be something new and different facing you. Now, there's been days I've gone to bed at night where I go, what am I thinking? But after a night's sleep, I'm ready to go again. And the industry just is that way. It's very dynamic, very challenging, but no 2 days are the same. But probably on a higher level, being able to see the types of projects that we as an industry participate in and how they change the economies of the communities in which we operate, and knowing that we may have had a piece or a part of that's exciting.
Yep.
Whether it's a Boy Scout donation to a 60-story building, we're shaping communities.
Yes.
And to know that maybe I had a piece and part of some of that is exciting.
No, that's a great point. The community aspect of our industry it's huge. The influence, as you said, I've talked to different personnel in concrete over the years, and riding with a ready-mix driver, and hear them boast about, I was involved in this big project, and there's something magic about that. So shaping the community is a big deal. I meant to ask you, and I'll go ahead and ask you because I'm curious to hear your perspective, slightly shifting gears, but how would you say that the Great Recession affected our industry? Any thoughts on that? You know what I'm saying? In other words, when you have huge circumstances, dramatic changes in the market, they can result in, things are, forever changed. Any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, and we learned a lot at that time, and people that lived through that know or remember that you really couldn't park trucks fast enough to stay ahead of what was coming. And so I think, well, I know that time, it forced us all to look at our businesses and remind ourselves what it takes to, from a cost perspective, to run it, operation efficiencies, just to rethink how we operate our businesses. I think the biggest thing is we also remember how interconnected we are as an industry, and how all those things are connected. But also, it's still about people. And even though we had to make difficult decisions along the way, I think how we handled some of those difficult decisions with people, which could be life-changing for some, to do that in the right way, and to be reminded that I want to be treated. I should treat that person like I want to be treated. Was pretty important. So, now coming out of it, what we learned then, we can apply in our businesses now and move forward.
No, those are really helpful insights, and I always like to hear, and I need to ask that more frequently. It dawned on me the other day that that's a very powerful question, and I've missed it on some of these interviews. I know one of the interviews, and I can't right away remember who it was. It was one of the producers that they what really got them through the Great Recession in their particular circumstance was being debt free. Mm-hmm. That was a huge deal. Anyway, thank you for that. Let me ask you this. Always like to hear thoughts on, standing here in the present, looking into the future. What would you say are things that are, I don't know if I don't call them threats, but just concerns, major things that we need to be thinking about as an industry, as companies, but looking forward, what are some of the things that would be on your radar strategically and as an executive?
Yeah, and hearing some of your other podcasts, there seems to be a common theme of things as we see the industry. And first, obviously, is people. We have to show people coming into our industry that we have career paths for them. And although concrete may not be sexy compared to a technology type career path, we're a pretty sophisticated industry and have great career paths for people. And we have to demonstrate that to help attract talent. Drivers, plant production people, whatever it may be, everybody. So it's showing career paths. Tort reform, we talked about this at Summit, the annual meeting. I do think that's a big concern for the industry. I know our insurance costs are continuously increasing, and anything we can do around that subject is important. Environmental, and as it relates to the carbon initiatives, we need to embrace that. That's coming our way. We've got to embrace that as an industry. And when I say industry, I mean cement, the ready-mix industry, the subcontracting industry, ABC, AGC, the general contractors, and owners and developers, and realize that we're all in this together. And these initiatives and these product changes and all these things that are coming at us shouldn't be on the back of the ready-mix guy or the concrete subcontractor. And it takes all of us working collaboratively to make sure we see this together. We're doing some things, the upcoming the ASCC, the American Society of Contractors annual meeting, on how we have these conversations with owners and developers to make sure they're aware of what we're trying to do. So it's an industry thing. We all got to be connected. It can't just be one or the other. It's got to be all of us together. And the last thing I would say, I talked about technology being changing. I also think that's something we got to be aware of, because technology can also get in the way of us building relationships. Our business is still a people-to-people business, and we have to remember sitting down face-to-face is how we do business.
Absolutely. Great points, John. Thank you. And you made me think of something I'm just going to briefly mention, and for listeners, most of you most of our listeners or members are aware that we've launched over the past year CTAC, and CTAC is an acronym for Concrete Testing Adherence Collaborative, which is kind of an obscure title, but the long and short of it is it's a collaboration, which is what it's going to take to be able to have our product tested in accordance with ASTM, and the fresh concrete testing, the making cylinders, field curing, transport, etc. That's a huge deal. And why I'm bringing it up right now at this moment is that you talked about sustainability, and one of the things that's pushing us to implement CTAC or work with this effort to address the testing is that the only way we can really take cement out, no one's going to want to take cement out if we put it there extra for a reason. It's an insurance policy,
Correct.
if you will.
Correct.
Do you know what I'm saying? So in other words, if we're going to take it out from this sustainability push, and part of what made me think of is you're talking about owners, the community, all the pieces, they need to understand this is bigger than just the testing labs. And what we've tried to communicate with our friends, and we have members that are with the labs, that what we're doing isn't a laser focus on lab behavior. Is that a part of it? Sure. Are we a part of it? Yes. Owners, but it's a bigger conversation that we just simply need some breakthroughs so that when we get those test results, we're not chasing, like we often do, incorrect results. From my experience, it's very rare that you have low brakes and you really have bad concrete. Can you comment for a moment? Would you like to?
I would say you have low cylinders most of the time. It's not low concrete brakes, but yeah, I mean, we've seen some changes recently, and we've seen how that affects us on certain projects. But we embrace it. We know it's coming. But I go back to my point. It shouldn't be the ready mix producer,
right,
or the concrete subcontractor that bears the brunt of these new technologies and acceptance of that. It's an industry-wide acceptance that's required, an understanding of how things may be changing.
Yes.
And what we were doing 10 years ago, that may look a little different today.
Yes.
But we're all here together, right?
Absolutely. So, and that was, I guess, one of the main points I wanted to make when I jumped into your discussion on that, was that, our view of tackling field testing is a bigger conversation than just the lab role. That's a part. I mean, no question, they're huge, but we want to tackle this thing together. We think there's a breakthrough ahead of us on it, and so okay. Let's see. Okay, changing gears a little bit. You've been involved in the Georgia Ready Mix Concrete Association for a long time, longer than I have. So I'd really like to hear your perspective on why join. What's the benefit? What value is there to be part of our association?
Well, as a senior level person in our industry, to me, it's a great place for the collective industry to come together, the industry partners to come together and discuss concerns or issues in a manner or format that's better for the industry. We get to form relationships, and that's great to know people and see them. But I look at the association as a think tank.
Yes.
For
Absolutely.
The industry. And best practices, whatever it may be, we get to come together and as a think tank discuss and implement and do things that make our industry better. As a young person coming in and starting my career, it was a great place to get involved in committee leadership. And maybe that committee was not my direct job, it was another role that I would perform. It's a great way to go, if I'm in sales, to be part of an operations committee, to learn operations. Secondly, in that committee to be chairman and lead that committee helped me develop my leadership skills as a young person.
Right.
Around my peers and around others. So from that standpoint, there's a lot of growth there. The networking not to mean sales, not relationships, but networking and knowing who to call, who I can ask for help, and know who I can rely on. And I look back, I've been able to participate with the Texas Aggregate and Concrete Association, the Carolinas Association, Virginia, and these different ones. And one thing I find unique is that at all those meetings, the people are the same. The names may be different, may look a little bit different, but it's the same people, meaning the same issues, same concerns across the whole U.S. I was part of the NRMCA, which I still am, but I was one of the first developing industry leader, the very first developing industry leader class.
Oh, okay.
And one of my cohorts, I texted him 2 weeks ago about a project we were chasing in Virginia. So networking, meaning who can I call as a resource, because we need help. And so I think the association provides a lot of benefit from that, along with us here in Georgia or elsewhere.
No, that's, I like your expression, think tank. I've not heard anyone say that. I've not thought it, but now that you mention it, absolutely. We've been think tanking a number of issues the last few years, so that's a good phrase. I'm thinking now that I would really like to hear about the people over. You've been in many different organizations, and as we know, I mean, we're all shaped and molded by people in our lives, family members, colleagues, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of people, but I guess what I'm asking for is, and this is always tough, but who are some of the really big influencers for you that shaped your philosophy of business or leadership, your management style, that sort of thing? Talk a little bit about that.
That's a great question, but a little bit of a trick question, because there's too many names to name.
Right.
And I truly mean that. As I look back over the years, I can think of plant operators, QC technicians, drivers, admixture partners, cement partners that all have had a piece of helping shape me, helping me learn. So there's really way too many names to name.
Yeah.
At a high level, the teams that I work with at Blue Circle, the teams at Cemex, the team at Quikrete, and teams at Command Alkon all have helped shape my development. But there are some a few people.
Sure.
And so first would be my wife, Mary Ann. We've been married 31 years now, and she's walked along beside me on this journey.
Yes.
Relocating several times for my career, which is never easy. Actually, relocating is typically easier for the person who's working versus the person who's staying home. But relocating for my career and giving me advice all along that I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear it.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah.
I mentioned David Grayson.
Yeah.
It's why I'm here today. David took a chance on me, put his name on the line, and hired me. He's always been a great sounding board for me, and yes, he's my brother-in-law, but he's really like a big brother to me.
Right.
So David's had a huge impact on my career. Had a chance to work with Carl Watson Jr., I mentioned earlier. Carl's one of those industry leaders that is just amazing. His curiosity and level of engagement is just unparalleled by anybody I've worked along beside. And to be able to be part of his tutelage was a big thing. And although I don't know Andy Stanley personally, I do get to hear him every Sunday, and he's a great communicator. So I find myself sometimes drifting, watching how he does things versus maybe listening to the message that day. But he's great, but he's also a great leadership advocate. And so I listen to his leadership teachings, and I've implemented those things in our business. So Andy's been a big impact. But now at Martin, Our senior leadership team, there's 8 of us, and we have a very healthy relationship among the 8 of us where we can be very transparent and vulnerable without worrying on repercussions. And so that team's been very key to where I am now and very successful. So, yeah, that's part of the dots I talked about, right? That
yes.
Have been part of helping shape me.
Yeah, and you said it well. It's a trick question in a way. It's like, how do you answer that question? I mean, yeah, you could think, oh, my father, which is true, a parent or Mary Ann, but then you say, gosh, there was this guy that I work with that, a plant manager here, and I just learned so much about life from this individual. Mm-hmm. It could be anybody. Mm-hmm. So if you're a learner, if you really love people and you care about people and you have an ear for them, you can learn from so many different people, and it does shape you. So that's good. Thank you for that. And so the last question I've got would be, I always like to hear what kind of advice would you offer, and I say to young people or people coming into the industry, but clearly it could be advice to any person in their beginning, launching their life's work, but it could be specific to our industry. Just general advice. What would you say?
Well, thank you. And this question I do like, because I'm at the point in my career where I'm able to work around young people, and it brings me joy to help see their development. But yeah, for me, I think several things here. Whatever role you're in, know your role very well, but also know the other roles in your company very well to expand your knowledge. Don't say it's not my job. Don't say it's not my role. Success in the ready mix business is based on the team, not based on me. And so it takes everybody to make it work. So remember, it's about team. As a young person, you own your own career development. You have to let others know what your career aspirations are and what you want to achieve. You just can't sit and wait for leadership to tap you on the shoulder and ask you to do a job. So you've got to take it. You've got to own your career development and work hard and make it known on what you want to do. Now, saying the above, saying what I just said, you got to be patient.
Yeah.
This is a marathon, not a sprint. So there's a long play here, and you have to be patient. Going out too fast can really derail you later. So just know that it takes time, and learn everything you can in the moment. We're a people-to-people business, Bill. Yeah. We talked about that already. Text messages, emails, Zoom, Teams are all great resources. Yes. But we've got to be in front of our people. We've got to be in front of our employees, our drivers, our plant guys, our customers. We have to see them face to face. We can't just hide behind a computer screen. So I think that's very important. Now, as a concrete contractor, sitting on the other side of the table from salespeople coming to see us, I tell people to bring me something of value, meaning teach me something I may not be aware I'm doing wrong. Show me something different. Help me run my business better, because you're seeing how other people do it probably more than we are. So bring us something of value. We appreciate breakfast. We appreciate lunch, but right. Bring me something of value. It's important. It makes me better. I also say it's okay to tell me no. Yeah. A lot of times we may not know some things we're doing that are going to be wrong. It's okay to tell us no, but have a solution when you do. And if you can tell me no and have a solution, that helps us see the value you're bringing more so to our business and a partner in what we're trying to do. But at the end of the day, if I boil it down, at the end of the day, really just do what's right. Treat others as you want to be treated. And if you have that same mantra through your career, yes, you will enjoy great success.
Yes. John, that's great counsel. I really appreciate what you've said, and I've enjoyed the time together. A lot of times we only have brief little moments of time that we have together. We had some good time today, and I really enjoyed it. Appreciate you, thankful for Martin, your support of the association, and being part of us, helping to help our industry. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you again, Bill. Like I said, thank you for having me today. It's I'm truly honored to be here. And our association is very strong, and we have a lot to be proud of. And we all are in the best state in the nation. We know that Georgia is the best state in the nation. So good to be part of it. Thanks.